Welcome to Groom Scroll. Bum bum bum. Like, you know what I mean? There should be like a little intro.
That's going to be it. I'm just going to add some noise to it. When we went on vacation and I didn't have a bidet, that's when I knew, like, I'm spoiled. And now I'm a bidet bitch.
A bidet, but yeah, Carl's been talking about getting a bidet attachment, and I keep telling him to do it, and he just doesn't do it. But maybe someday we'll have clean buttholes.
Someday you'll have a bidet.
Day by day, we'll have a
Day
bidet.
bidet. That is a great, that's a great slogan for a bidet. Day by day. Day by
Day
day.
by day, your butthole will
You
be cleaner.
just, with your bidet. Okay.
Let's talk about a movie.
Let's get into this week's episode of Groom Scroll. Okay. Also, is it Groom Scroll or Groom Scrolling?
What do the graphics say that I made?
I've been
Groom
calling it Groom
Scroll.
Scroll.
Yeah, I think it's Groom Scroll, right?
Yeah, but you have said Groom Scrolling a
Girl,
few
I say
times.
a lot of things. I say a lot of things. You can't listen to them.
A gift of the gab, as you say.
Listen, I
All
like to
right.
flap my gooms, and they aren't always correct.
Okay, so welcome back to
Mm,
Groom Scroll. And today we are talking about May December.
a
Yeah,
movie
a
that
movie.
came out in, what, 2023? You're the one that's supposed to have
Yes.
all the info. You're the info lady.
Okay, correct. I do have some notes here. Yes, so it came out in 2023 and it stars Natalie Portman, Julianne Moore, Charles Melton, and a bunch of other people. It was directed by Todd Haynes, who we know from Carol, everyone's favorite holiday time movie, also starring Natalie Portman. No. Yes, no, Rooney Mara. That's Rooney Mara and Kate Blanchett. Okay. But he has worked with Julianne Moore on a few movies. Anyway, so yes, it came out in 2023. And I thought that, so I think I've said a few times that this is based on a true story. And it turns out it's inspired by a true
Mhm.
story. And so we'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, Sarah, do you know what the term May December, like what that phrase means?
Yeah, I've heard that one before. It's like young and old. You're in the spring of your life, and someone else is in the winter of theirs. It's like a
Yeah.
fluffy way of saying, big age difference in a relationship.
I remember thinking for most of my life have followed an academic calendar, either as a student myself or
Mm.
working as an educator. So my first thought was like, oh, interesting. These are two important months in an academic year. It's like winter break and then summertime. So, yeah, but okay, cool. I had to look up what that meant. So, I'm glad you knew what the phrase May December is.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I just heard it growing up, and then there's also that other movie with Richard Gere and Winona Ryder that is a very similar name, and that's like April, November, or June, November, or something. It's like kind of the same idea, and there's like a huge age difference between them, which I did have to look up before I watched this movie because I was like, "Girl, make sure you're watching the right movie because this is going to be super confusing if you show up and you're talking about Richard Gere and she's talking about Natalie Portman." So I'm very glad that I double checked our paperwork.
Oh, man, that would've been hilarious if we watched 2 different movies. I mean, I guess we could still talk about it, but, like, was she under 17 when Richard
No, I've
Gere.
never even seen it. I don't know. I
Oh.
don't I don't think I don't think so. From what I've seen of the
Okay.
poster and stuff, I think it's just that there's a big age gap, but I don't think it's like a power dynamic. Fuck, I don't know. I've never seen it. Who knows? Maybe he's her boss or something. I hadn't the slightest. But May December was a Netflix original, though. Full disclosure, I watched it like an hour ago because I forgot to. Hey,
Same.
yay!
It's just
That's
I've
why
been
I
so
texted you and I
busy.
was like, we're doing this today, right?" You're like, "Yes." I was like, "Shit, okay, I'll go watch that." Yeah, what is your I don't know, what was your feeling? What was your reaction? This is nice, it was so fresh in both our heads here.
Yeah, thank you for your honesty and transparency, Sarah. I
Yeah, well,
also watched this. I watched it in 2 parts. So I watched it this morning before I went to an appointment with my sister, and then I finished the last, like, 40 minutes when I got back. I found, like, the bug thing because
mm,
Miller's Girl had the whole spider, right? The whole, like,
yeah.
"Oh, spiders here and there," and talking about spiders. And this one is there's, like, monarch butterflies,
Mhm.
and they take a significant, I feel, time, and so that's something that I feel like I do need maybe a little more time to kinda think about, but
Mhm.
I don't know, I wonder what creatively, right? Like,
Mhm.
why pick something like an insect or a bug? But that was just one of my first thoughts because I think that was in one of the opening scenes is, like, the monarch butterflies.
The whole opening
Also
credits, yeah.
yeah, yeah, I like the lettering of the opening credits, and that piano score is intense.
Yeah, I know the whole movie, I was like,
Very
"Is someone about to
dramatic.
get murdered?" It was, like, so tense the whole time. Also, my first note was, "Butterfly equals Miller's girl spider." So, hey, buddy. I guess I should have started with, this movie is about an actress played by Natalie Portman. We should probably explain the
Yes.
high y'all,
I
we're still
do
not good at
have
this.
I do have a
Bad
note here that says, like, "Plot," and then, yeah, I hadn't gotten to that yet, but yes, let's talk about what this is actually about.
Yeah, so Natalie Portman is playing an actress who is going to play the lead role in a movie about a woman who seduced and assaulted a 13-year-old when she was like what, 37,
36 in the movie.
36 in the movie. And so Natalie Portman like goes and stays with the woman years later. So like the woman who assaulted the kid, she goes to jail. They end up having kids together. They get married. They're still together. And Natalie Portman is going to their house to like character study this woman, I guess, so that she can play her in this movie. And so the whole movie is just about this kind of tense, I don't know, 1 week that this actress has like living or hanging out around this quote unquote couple as like a character study for her to be able to play this woman in this movie about the assault, essentially. So that's a high level of what the plot of the movie is. But yes, I agree, the butterfly thing seemed like I caught on to it really quick in the beginning, because it's the whole intro. But to me, and it's 'cause just me, my interpretation is like that the butterfly represents the victim, right? Because he's like at the beginning of the movie, he's like collecting the eggs from the monarch butterfly off of the milkweed and he's like putting it in a cage so that it can like grow into a caterpillar. And I just feel like every time there was like a scene with a now adult victim who was 13 when he was assaulted, he's still married to his abuser. He's still drinking the Kool-Aid that this is like a love story, yada yada, but like it starts to break down in the movie that like he's starting to realize that it wasn't okay and maybe he's not okay and that he's maybe not happy in this relationship with this person. And it seemed like after each scene of him kind of having like an intense realization about that, they would show the monarch butterfly developing. So it was like the caterpillar, and then it was the chrysalis, and then there was that scene of him like letting the butterfly go off of the porch. And so to me, that was like him letting go of that story, right? Or just kind of that like development for him as like a survivor of kind of like, oh shit, this is actually what it is. So that's how I took it. I thought that the butterfly was like a representation of his processing.
I felt similarly because think about a caterpillar before it is a butterfly. It's just a little caterpillar, and it's perfectly like, okay, like, there's nothing wrong with the caterpillar. A caterpillar can
Mhm.
just be a caterpillar, survive always being a caterpillar until it has to turn into a butterfly. So it's just so interesting to me that in that process, it, like, closes itself off from everything, literally, like, turns into goo and
Yeah.
soup and then becomes something else completely a
Yeah.
completely different creature from what it was, and so I also took that to be like, "Okay, I am not the caterpillar anymore. I've
Mhm.
become this completely new person, new creature that now is starting to see the light through the cracks." Like,
Mhm.
it's clear that he's still processing it, but he's at least now at a point where 36, about to be an empty nester with someone who abused him when he was 13. And actually, let me go back to the thank you for talking about the plot. it was hard for me to not think about the real situation, real abuse, I don't know, real people that this was based
Mhm.
on or inspired by. So I do wanna talk just a little bit about, like, what the real case was so that as we're talking about the movie that was inspired by the real people, I think that provides a little bit of context. Julianne Moore's character in the movie, her name is Gracie. She is based on, Mary Kay Letourneau, I think that's how you say it, Letourneau, who was 34 when she first met Vali Falau when
Who
he
was her
was
victim?
who was her victim in his 2nd grade. So she was his 2nd grade teacher, and then she wasn't his teacher until 6th grade, but she still was involved in his life for
Mhm.
those, like, 4 years, but it wasn't until 6th grade that she actually sexually abused him, and that's when she was 34 and he was 12. So she met him when she was 30. He was what's 12 minus 4? 8. And
Gross.
then yes,
I
and
mean,
then
12
the
is also gross, to be clear, I'm not saying that one is more gross than another, but man, it is upsetting. Like, those ages are rough. Those are rough.
well, yeah, honestly, and the thing is, like, it so she first had him when he was in 2nd grade. And
Mhm.
the thing that, like, kept coming up in all these articles was that she was really impressed with his art skills, and she wanted to, like, develop those skills, and she gifted him with, like, art supplies and stuff, and just, like, really wanted to cultivate his artistic side. So it's like it's the same fucking pattern of, like, "Let me
Yeah.
shape you." And it's fucking disgusting that, like, it's like, what? I was 7, I think, in 2nd grade. To think that a seed was planted at that age for her of, like, some kind of sexual desire is
Yeah.
very disturbing.
Yeah, so I had looked up the inspiration after I watched it, and I had heard that story before. I mean, I think that's a news story that most people are somewhat aware of, or like when you see your photo, you're kind of like, oh, yeah, I kind of remember if you were alive then. I remember that story
Yeah,
happening.
millennials and Gen Xers.
I was gonna say, yeah, younger listeners probably don't know what we're talking about. And I had read that that woman ended up going to jail and then she got out and then she ended up marrying her victim and they stayed married up until I think 2019. They finally got divorced and then she
No.
passed away, right?
So she got caught, her husband, because she was married, her husband found letters that she wrote
Mm,
to Vali and then reported her. So she went to jail. She went to jail while she was pregnant because when she sexually abused Vali, she got pregnant. And so she went to jail, gave birth to a baby, and then she got out of jail. I think she served 3 years.
yeah.
She got out of jail and then she violated the orders and had contact with Vali. She wasn't supposed to. She got caught in a car with him, abusing him, got pregnant that time, and went back to jail. And then she served 7 years. And I think once she got out, which is like early 2000s,
Mhm.
they got married in 2005 and then they divorced in 2017. And then she died in
17.
2020. Yeah.
Okay,
So
yeah.
it was like, yeah, pretty soon after they divorced. But oh, wow. Oh my God. Can you imagine? I don't even know. I have no
Well,
words.
I mean, that's that kid's whole life.
Yes.
I mean, that's his whole life. And I did read an article where he was talking about this movie May December and being like pretty upset about not being like consulted on it, even though the creators definitely said that it was inspired by, not based on, and I don't know what the freaking line is between inspired and based. But I read a thing that he said, we could have worked together and made a masterpiece, and instead they just copied or
Yeah.
something like that. And I was interested to know like what his idea of a masterpiece would be and what his perspective is on what happened to him because clearly like he married her and spent a long time with her, but then they got divorced. But then it was also she had cancer, so it's like, well, did you get divorced for some like insurance-y reason? You know what I mean? Or was it like legitimately
Mm,
like I don't want to be with you anymore? Like,
I didn't think about that.
I mean, I'm not trying to say that's what it is, but I'm just like
No, I know,
not
but that's a
knowing.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, like did he get to a point where he was like, okay, I was abused and this is fucked up and I got to get out of here? Because I also was watching an interview with the two of them, which they directly quote in the movie.
So disturbing.
So
And
disturbing. So it's like
so
in the
triggering.
movie, I know, in the movie, the victim as an adult now,
His name's
talking to
Joe in the
his
movie.
Joe is talking to his wife, aka his abuser, Julianne Moore's character, and like kind of tries to have this conversation of I am starting to have feelings about this, and maybe I wasn't ready to be making decisions about having fucking kids when I was 13. Because same in the movie, she gets pregnant from assaulting this kid, and she just is like, "Well, you were in control, and who was in control, and you
You
seduced
seduced
me."
me. Ugh.
Yeah, and so it was so wild to watch the real footage of the real people, and she fucking says that in the interview, and she's just so intense.
With the same look, yeah, like
Yeah,
coaching, who saying
yeah,
the repetition, like, "Who was in charge? Who was in charge? Who was in charge?" Like, I'm like, I'm so physically uncomfortable right now.
yeah. It's so gross, and in his body language in that footage as well, like, he's looking down, like, he's clearly shutting down and, like, doesn't know how to react in the moment, so yeah, I mean, I think there's no way to say that this movie is not strongly informed by the true story of what happened to that young man. I don't know. I think as a whole, the movie did a good job, I think, at showing the ripple effect of it, because it's showing like how it affects like their kids. Like, can you imagine if this was your parents' story? Like, my mom sexually assaulted my dad when he was 13. Like, what in the flying fuck? Like, how would you wrap your head around that? And I think they did a good job of kind of like hinting at that with all the kids of like clearly they've got issues about this and clearly they don't like it and it's just kind of this issue thing they don't really talk about. And then they, show her ex-husband and she had kids with that guy and what it did to those kids. Like, so I thought they did a good job of kind of trying to show the fallout, I guess, of all the other people it hurt, not just the person she physically abused. Okay, so I wrote at the end of it, I wrote, what is the point of this movie? Like, and not in like a bitchy way, but like, what is the point this movie is trying to make, right? Because you're telling this story about this clearly bad person. I'm not sorry, clearly bad person who sexually assaulted a 13-year-old, is manipulative as fuck, does that creepy baby voice thing when she's like confronted and starts lisping, which was
Okay, thank you.
so weird. Like,
Thank you for saying, because I was wondering if I was imagining that. Because there's that one scene
no.
where she's in the bathroom with Natalie Portman, and she's like, "I've always been naive. It's a blessing," or something like that, and I was like, "Wait,
Yeah.
did she just, like, start making up a lisp?" But then I started noticing it more, especially in that scene where Joe's trying to confront her about it.
It's every time she's confronted by anybody about like, the abuse or anything she doesn't wanna talk about, she starts lisping, which is very much like she's trying to act like a kid. She's trying to make herself look innocent. Like, there's so many times in the movie where she says, like, "Well, he had more sexual partners than I did before we got together, and I was sheltered, and I'm naive." Like, she's trying to present herself as a child to justify her behavior is kind of the way that I took it. Um well, now I lost my train of but, like, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, like and even the scene where she like, someone cancels their cake order and she's, like, hysterical and she's crying, that is cuckoo bananas childish behavior. So it's that thing of, like, okay, does this person legitimately have a personality disorder where they're really emotionally immature, not that that justifies sexually assaulting a 13-year-old, or is this just a person that cannot fucking cope with what they did, and so they are telling themselves this story, and they are internalizing this, like, "I'm just a little baby, like, I didn't do nothing wrong," weird story that it's, like, become their personality, like, I thought it was a really interesting aspect of it, I guess, just that the lispy baby voice and the really childish behavior, but it's also super manipulative because how would you leave somebody like that? Like, he can't leave her, she's hysterical about a fucking cake.
The dynamics all around, just were very unsettling and uncomfortable because there's still this very, like, maternal almost dynamic
Mhm.
between her and Joe, where she's constantly like, "How's your dad gonna get to grow?" I just like the tone. I'm
Yeah.
checking in with the child. Can't like when she talks to him about his bugs, that dynamic, and then between Joe and his son, one of the
Mhm.
twins who he gets high with on the roof and then just his son having to take care of him and hold space for him and be like, "I'm okay, don't worry about me." You, talked about that scene where he is, like, trying to have a conversation with her.
Mhm.
That actor did such a good job, I think, also portraying how like, he looked like he was crawling in his skin just to
Yeah.
even, like, be able to muster the words to confront her or to at least not even confront her, but just to talk to her about, like, "Hey, I'm
Mhm.
having thoughts about that maybe I wasn't ready to make these kinds of decisions when I was 13, but also, like, I'm struggling with that because we have kids from this experience, and what does that mean?" I love my kids. Yeah, that scene was so disturbing and hard to watch, and then to see that it was because I also did research afterwards. I had heard about the story as well, but, like, wanted to look for a little bit more details and to see that, like, it was an actual exchange that happened, between Mary Kay Letourneau and Billy Palau was just so ugh, it was so icky. I found myself thinking like, "Oh, I wonder if this really happened. I wonder if, like, it really
Mm.
kinda went like this." And yeah, I just think it's important to let our listeners know that it is strongly inspired by
Yes.
this case that happened in the '90s, but the movie itself seems to be like, the little details seem to be very fictionalized.
Yeah, and I feel like I started on this and never finished my thought, but Natalie Portman's character is really fucked up. So she's the actress who is, studying to play this role, but then she is being a big old pervert too. And so like there's the scene where she goes to the high school. So she's asked to go to the high school to talk to like the drama class cuz she's supposed to be like a famous actress in the movie, and they're a bunch of teenagers. So the boys ask like, "Oh, have you ever done a sex scene?" And all I could think is like, there is no way a teacher would be like, "Yeah, please answer that question." They would be like, "No, like next fucking question." And she goes into like extreme detail about how when you're doing a sex scene, you're trying to pretend like you're aroused, but then eventually there is something happening between you and the actor and you don't want to acknowledge it. So then you're acting like you're not aroused. And it's like, am I acting to be aroused or acting not to be aroused? And just talking about like how arousing sex scenes can be, right? And I thought that scene was very ishy, because she's talking to a bunch of teenagers. And then it shows her getting like casting call videos of 13-year-old boys to play the boy in the movie that she's supposed to be in. And I was watching, I was like, "Yeah, how are you gonna make this movie and not traumatize the kid who's playing the victim? Like, this doesn't make any sense." And she, like, yeah, says to the producer or whoever casting agent on the phone, like, that they're not sexy enough, that the boys
Yeah.
aren't,
And then he's
like,
like, "You need to come home.
yeah,
You're
like, you need to
getting
get the
too into it."
get the fuck out of there, like, the pervert's rubbing off on you. And then, yeah, she ends up sleeping with the husband, and it's this very cold, calculated thing, and it's like, dude, you just
Mhm.
fucked a sexual abuse victim, and then he's
Yeah.
all confused
And then
and
she
thinks
says sorry, I'm interrupting you.
no, like, I'm just saying, like, he thinks there's, like, something happening between them, and she's like, "This is just what grown-ups do," and it's like,
That part. What?
so you're getting off on the idea that you think he's a child. Like, there's some part of your brain that is excited to fuck this guy because you're thinking about him as this 13-year-old because you're about to play the woman who fucked him as a 13-year-old. And then I was thinking,
Yeah.
but also he's having sex with a woman who's about to play the woman who is his wife and his abuser. I was like, this is some this is like some layered shit of the human mind is a complicated place. But I just I just felt so bad for him. Like I was just like, this poor guy, and he's clearly unhappy in his marriage, and he's, like, texting some other character that we never really, like, see in the movie.
But they or whoever is also, like, really into the butterflies. Sounds like that's probably how they met.
Yeah, and so I think it's just supposed to imply, like, he's not happy, and he wants out, and he doesn't know how to get out, and he's coming to terms with maybe the fact that he's been in an abusive relationship his entire life. Yeah, and then Natalie Portman at the fucking end where it's like, "Oh, they're making the movie," and it's, like, her doing a scene with whatever hot enough 13-year-old for her, I guess, and they keep redoing the scene over and over and over, and then the director is like, "Cut, we've got it," and she's like, "No, it's starting to finally feel real. I wanna do it again." It's like, "Okay, now she's a perv? Like, damn it!" Like, so that's where I was kinda like, What is the point of, like, what is the message of this movie?
So I wanna get back to that, but I want to comment on something that you mentioned when she's talking to, like, I sounds looks like maybe it's just, like, a group of high school, like, theater kids and
Mhm.
anyone else who is interested, I don't know. So I think this is a great place to have this conversation. I didn't find that scene as problematic or as, dangerous or explicit or I don't know, taboo, what the word might be. When she was talking to the kids, the high school kids, I kind of felt like she was talking to, like, kids who are interested in acting, and the response to the question of, "Have you ever done this?" Like, have you the kid asked, "Have you ever been in sex scenes?" So that's also important to
Mm.
note that she didn't just, like, start talking to them about sex. One of the kids, a high school boy, they're being all giggly, and one of them asks, "Oh, have you ever been in a sex scene?" And, Elizabeth, Natalie Portman's character responds, I felt like in a very mature way of saying like, "Yes, I have, and this is what it's been like," and, like, the real physicality of it and what it is like to be in a sex scene, but she wasn't talking, "Oh, and then it, I'm going down on a guy," or, whatever. She didn't get into, like, those
Sure.
details. So, like, I felt like she actually handled that question well, and it didn't feel as, like, creepy to me. Can you talk a little bit about, like, why like, what was so unsettling for you about that
I
scene?
felt she just, like, I feel like it was one thing to just say, like, yeah, they can be, like, awkward sometimes, and sometimes they're a little bit more, like, fluid. I feel like it's like when she started going into, and then sometimes you, like, get a, like, she was talking about, like, being aroused in the situation and, like, going with the flow and, like, letting your body take over, and I was kinda like, I don't know, I just felt like it was kinda like there was already a creep factor happening with her because I think this was also post they're not sexy enough when she's looking at the children. Like, there's
Mm,
already been, like, a tempo set that it was kinda like, this chick is getting a little weird towards kids or is kind of like, and I don't even think it's that, I think it's just supposed to be like she is so in her head about, like, I need to become this character, like, method actor. Because there's that scene where she goes to the place where they were caught having sex in the warehouse, right? And she, like,
yeah.
lays down on the ground and is, like, recreating having sex by herself on the floor. Like, there was just obviously, like, a dedication level to the gig that was, like, becoming a gray area. So I guess that was painting probably my interpretation of her communication in that scene with a bunch of underage kids, is it's like, clearly these boys are asking this question because they think you're hot, and it was also established early in the movie that there is naked photos of her on the internet in sex scenes, so for, like, the boys to
Mm,
ask that, I just felt like it was very, like, the point of the question is, "I wanna talk about you being sexualized," and then the way that she answered it was, like, talking about arousal and, like, letting your body give in to the movements and stuff, and it was kinda like, I don't know that you needed, I don't know, like, it just felt like she was maybe enjoying talking about it in front of a bunch of boys that were enjoying asking her about it. I don't know
mm.
if I would've felt that way if they hadn't already kind of laid that groundwork, though, about her
Yeah, I don't
being
I
sus.
don't remember. I I'm trying to look at my notes to, try see if I can pinpoint the timeline, but yeah, I don't know, I was just curious. I wonder sometimes if there's still things that I have blinders to be honest.
Well, I am probably I mean, that's it's funny though, we both experience the same thing, right? Like, I feel like I tend to be hyper duper, like, cautious about that kinda stuff or just, well, here's a good example. After we went public with what happened to us, there were teenagers that reached out from a school newspaper wanting to interview us about what happened to us involving our abuser, and while I was very impressed that those kids reached out, and I really, like, thought it was cool that they wanted, I doubt they would have been allowed to publish whatever they were gonna write, but I thought it was really cool that they wanted to dig into that, and they were trying to inquire about our experience and the teacher that they thought that they had known. Um, but I didn't do it because I didn't think there was a way, or I wasn't ready to, I don't know. I was like, I could not fathom a way that I could discuss being sexually assaulted by my teacher to teenagers in a way that didn't feel creepy or that felt safe for them. Like, I don't know, like, and I'm not saying it's impossible to do that because I do think that, like, that can be done properly, but I didn't feel qualified maybe or, like, prepared to, like, how do you answer those questions and what's okay to answer and what's not okay to answer? I was just really afraid that I was gonna, like, somehow vicariously be creepy by talking about what happened, if that makes sense. So maybe that's what made me feel weird in that scene was it was kind of the idea of, like, how do you talk about especially when the kids know the person who assaulted you? Like, it's so personal, and I just felt like what are the odds they're not gonna ask a question that's a little inappropriate, and then how honest do I wanna be? I don't know. I didn't do it, and I have thought about it multiple times since then. I thought about it the other day, I was like, part of me is, like, thought about even reaching out back to that kid and just being like, "Hey," like, maybe now we could talk about it or something, but I don't know. What was how did you feel when that inquiry came in?
I'm so glad you mentioned that because I thought about that situation when you brought up this that it was just like weird or creepy too that she was talking to the kids about sex scenes because I remember we both got a message and if I remember correctly, it was not an official it sounded like this was a group of kids from the other
Mhm.
high school. So there's 2 high schools in my hometown and the kids who reached out to us over social media were from the other high school, not the one that I went to.
Okay.
And it also sounded like it was like an underground
Yes.
kinda newspaper, that it wasn't like a school sanctioned publication. It was
I
like more of an
know.
underground thing.
And I think that's also what made me feel a little weird about it, as I just felt like I want another adult in the
Yes.
room during this conversation, and it felt very like there is not another adult in the room, and I was like, I don't wanna have it be like, now I got 10 people's parents coming after me saying I'm being a fucking weirdo. You know what I mean? It just felt such like a hot potato.
And I remember my first reaction was more because this happened during the lawsuit process. It was like when I had first announced that I was going to sue, and then it took months for all of that to pan out. We were contacted during like that time window. So
Mhm.
I couldn't talk to these kids in my mind because of the lawsuit. There wasn't anything really in my mind of like, oh, maybe this isn't appropriate because I've spent a lot of time working with high school kids and in my mind, I was thinking like, yes, I would love to talk to these kids. Like, I
Mhm.
would love to talk to high school that's part of like, what I want to do, right? Is like write a
Yeah.
book that reaches adolescents and kids because they're also the ones that need to hear some of these things. And so yeah, I think I wonder, like I said, like I wonder sometimes if I still have some of those blinders or just like
Mhm.
I don't think about things in that way as much, even though like, I know my intention, right? It would be to,
Yeah.
like, help educate, help raise awareness. I would want another adult to be part of the process, but it didn't feel as like, "Oh, no, I shouldn't be talking about the topic of abuse with kids or, like, sexual things with
Yeah.
kids."
And I mean, and so that's the thing. Technically, I could have because I was not a part of the lawsuit. But then it also still felt like, could I vicariously fuck up your lawsuit? You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
it was such a complicated time, and there was just so much like, be careful, I think going on. But yeah, my initial instinct was, yeah, I was like, these are some badass kids, dude. This is cool. Like that I thought it was neat that they were, like, trying to reach out to us, and they were trying to dig into the story, and I really commended them for it, and I think I think I wrote that in my email back to them, like, "I think this is super cool," and then I just think I just said, "At this time, I can't because of the lawsuit," but yeah, there was for sure a big part of my brain that was just like, "I don't know how I would do that." Like, I don't know, it's like one thing to think about, like, oh, you're asked to go and talk to a bunch of kids, feels different because 'cause you're, like, directing the conversation and you have your topic points and "This is what we're gonna talk about," but then to be, like, interviewed the other way back, I was kinda like, "I do not know if I have my ducks in a row to be prepared to have that conversation," because they're teenagers and, like, what are they gonna ask? I have no idea. Are they gonna ask something that's gonna be triggering for me? Are they just gonna ask super generic questions? Yeah, I don't know. I've just felt super, like, hot potato, not my potato. I am not in the space to do this right now. Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe reality lies somewhere between the 2 of us. Maybe it's a good thing to be a little weirded out about it, but, I still think
I
it's a
think it
good thing to
is.
do.
because at the end of the day, I think you're doing that to protect the kids, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So, early on in the movie, Natalie Portman, Elizabeth, she is having dinner with, well, at first it's with, Gracie, Julianne Moore's character, Joe, and then I think the twin one of the twins, the boy, and Gracie gives him milk to, like, have with dinner, and he's about to go to college, so he's
Mhm.
like, "Mom, I don't want this," and he's, like, very upset, and Gracie starts talking about to everyone, Joe and Elizabeth, about how their son has really sensitive stomach or no, low calcium and
Mhm.
kinda, like, babying him a little bit, and so he gets all upset and, slams the door, goes to his room. But later on in that dinner, Elizabeth is asking Gracie what her relationship is like with the kids that she had with her first husband. In the movie,
Mhm.
his name's Tom. And immediately Gracie's like, "Why does that even matter?"
Mhm.
And Elizabeth's response is, "Well, there are things that exist inside people that don't necessarily come to head until later, and I try looking for the seeds of those things." And then, like, right after, Gracie's like, "Oh, yeah, we talk all the time." That line during like, while I was watching it, I there was a disconnect in my mind of like, "Wait, what?" Gracie is like, "Why does that matter?" And then this is the response. I don't see how this is I don't get what she's trying to say, what Elizabeth is trying to say about what like, how it connects to the relationship Gracie has with her older kids.
I mean, I think what she's trying to say is that, like, your behavior directly has impacted the way that you have your relationship with those kids now. And so I'm trying to depict you during that time that you are doing that behavior and who were you then, as that's gonna, like, paint who you are now.
Ah, okay,
You know what I mean? Like, were
okay.
you a super
Yes.
close mother with your kids then, or were you like, because she's also body shaming her kids through the whole fucking movie. She was
Yeah.
so problematic, like, top to bottom. I mean, I think they were just trying to make her, like, a really there was absolutely nothing pleasant about her. Like, they made her a very unpleasant character, and she's, like, fat shaming the girls and kind of bulk shaming the boys, and, because that's her big thing is, like, "I want you to bulk up before you go to college because people are gonna think you're a little boy," and it's like, that's also
Yeah.
creepy because you fucked a little boy. Like, it's just she's terrible. Like, she's a very unlikable character.
Even her cakes don't look that good. It is so the sorry, now I'm just, like, the similarities with Miller's Girl, also
Yeah.
of just, like, taking, like, place in the South and these bugs and
I thought the same thing when they showed it at the very beginning when that was in the South. I was like, "Oh, is it okay because 'cause we're in the South?" Like, is that gonna be the moral of the story? "Oh, it's different because 'cause we're in the South." Yeah, I definitely had that same thought of weird aesthetic similarities, but they're pretty different, I mean, aesthetically speaking, but the bugs and the Southern thing and, like, some of the architecture, I feel like was kinda similar between the 2. A lot less fog machines in this movie, so
Yeah. So, we've spent some time talking about, I think, our 3 main characters, Joe, Elizabeth, and Gracie. There's a scene where Elizabeth is meeting with, I think, one of Gracie's lawyers at some point. They're at,
Mm.
like, a
Mhm.
restaurant, and she's talking to him about, like, "What did you think about when you first heard," when she asked you for help and everything. And Elizabeth goes, "It seems like Gracie's really liked in the community." And the lawyer essentially says, "Well, people feel bad for her. We keep ordering cakes from her because we want to keep her in business, but it's like pity." So I don't know. It made me think of this bigger conversation of real life
Mhm.
abusers or real life predators who are still respected members in their
sure.
communities, and I do think this happens a lot, because, sadly, a lot of the time, there isn't justice, and I'm thinking of a specific person who I met throughout the last few years who sued her district as well, and her abuser is still, like, a really respected former educator because he's now retired in the community, and just, like, how hard that must be
Mm.
as a victim trying to seek justice, like, trying to share about what happened to you, knowing that there's still is, like, a big group of people who like this person.
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know if have a question with it, but it made me think of it's not my experience, right? Like,
Because luckily, our abuser is off-putting and people don't like him.
and he lives in a different state, than
Yeah,
both of us, so, like,
yeah,
he's not in our communities, but
yeah.
there's so many survivors out there who are victims of educators who abuse them, adults who abuse them, who still have to coexist with
I
their
can't imagine.
abuser.
I can't imagine, dude. Like, even when I first met you, the idea that you were in the same city or metro area, let alone state as our abuser, stressed me the fuck out. Like, it stressed me out. Like, there's no way. Like, if I had to go to the grocery store and just think that he might be in the grocery store every time I went, like, it'd be terrible. Because it would just be like your worst nightmare. You know what I mean? Like going around a corner and there's your abuser just standing there existing, buying a frozen pizza, getting to
Yeah.
live their fucking lives like nothing happened. So yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely complicated in a situation like the one depicted in the film where the abuser is still in a relationship with their victim too, because then the public around them like doesn't necessarily know how to act or how to, if this person doesn't think they were abused, should I think that they were abused? And well, that's pretty gross, but I don't know. You know what I mean? I think it puts people into a big weird gray area. And I think that was kind of the messaging around other people's perception of her. But then also the lawyer said something at one point of like, oh, Natalie Portman asked, like, well, when did she seem to have remorse? And the lawyer was like, does she still? Like, has she yet? Like, pretty much like, have you seen her have any remorse?" So I
Yeah.
think that was an interesting that made me think of our abuser a lot too, of that idea of self-delusion,
Mm.
like her character clearly she was drinking her
It's
own
not.
Kool-Aid, man. Like,
Yes.
she was, like, convincing herself that he was in control, he seduced her, they were in love, he was
It's
more
Romeo and
experienced than
Juliet.
her. Yeah, and it made me really think of our abuser too, because we've talked about that. Like, I often wonder, like, are these things that he just said to the police to get out of getting jail time, right? Or is he that fucking delusional that he truly believes that he was in love with you and me and also has erased the fact that he sexually abused us when we were under 18? Like, because that's what he told the police. So it's like, is that, I think about it a lot. Like, I
Yeah.
do wonder where it's like, how much of this is just the lies you're telling other people and how much of it is lies you're telling yourself?
She doesn't seem to understand the concept of childhood. Like, the fact that she
Mhm.
said he had been with 2 other women,
Yeah.
I assumed immediately, I hope that those were girls his age, that those aren't women. He
Yeah.
was 13, you know what I mean? So, yeah, the fact that, like, she is even sexualizing the kids that he had sexual relationships with before her, like, yeah, it didn't seem like she just couldn't understand childhood and
The part where Natalie Portman says something to her like, "Oh, do you ever reflect back on your past?" And she says, like, "You just sit there and you think about the things that you did?" Like it's a crazy thing to do, and I was like, "Oh my god,
Yeah.
this person is nuts." Like, and I was kinda like, are there people that don't do that? Are there people in this world right now that are just like, they experience something and then they move forward and they don't reflect on it? 'Cause that's wild, man. That is not my
Yeah.
experience. Shit, I'll, like, run into somebody on the street and then all day long be like, "Why are you so weird? Why did you say that thing that you said?" Like, the fuck is wrong with you? So I thought that was a very telling I feel
Mm.
like Julianne Moore's character almost said it in a way that was like, "Oh, you're so self-centered. Like, you just sit around
Yeah,
thinking about yourself."
and the things you've done.
Now I think that's kind of being
What?
self-reflective, which is good. That's what we're all supposed to be doing. Yeah, it was an interesting movie. I guess I kind of try to interpret Natalie Portman's character as just an actor who was a little too in depth on character acting and seemed to really kind of be picking up some crazy from Julianne Moore's character. And Julianne Moore's character was just absolutely batshit nuts. Do you think that, because it's also implied at one point that Julianne Moore's character was sexually assaulted by her older brother, and Natalie Portman is like, "Oh, that would make sense." Because it's true, a lot of people who are victims of abuse can go on to abuse people, but then Julianne Moore's character is super like, "That's a lie, blah, 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 like, that didn't really happen." I just thought that was an interesting thing to throw into the movie where it's like, what are we saying? What are we trying to do here?
I don't know anything about Mary Kay Letourneau's actual history with sexual abuse herself as a victim, but for the movie purposes in the movie, I do think Julianne Moore's character, Gracie, was abused by somebody. Maybe her brothers, maybe someone else, but something is not right with this person as far as, like, how she thinks of sex and kids, and that doesn't mean that, like, everyone like that they've been abused. I don't know, but, like, there's something not right with her. I do think that her character was abused, and it's just another lie that she's convincing herself of, and she's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, those are that's that nasty stuff," and I talk to Georgie every day. I don't know, I think those were just more lies, but I did think it
Mm.
was the scene ended with that dramatic ass piano music with those
Yeah.
low keys and Julianne Moore not Julianne Moore, Natalie Portman's character kind of looking like she got the rug pulled from under her, almost like,
Yeah.
"Oh, well, that's where I was going for all my inspiration," is like, "Oh, well, she was
Mhm.
also abused, and now I have, like, what, pity, empathy, sympathy for her?" And it kinda seemed like she was just like, "Whoa, what do I do now?" And then it cuts to the scene where she's filming the movie with the kid over and over again. I do love and I think it's something we should all ask when we're watching movies is like, who is this for? What is the point of it? Like, why
Mhm.
did someone spend all this time and money making this thing? I was reading about because I think the screenplay got nominated for a Golden Globe or, like, some kind of
Hmm.
award, and so I've been reading a lot about, like, the writer and the writing, and, like, with Election, this is supposed to be a comedy of sorts. Like, people are people even there's Reddit threads where people are like, "Oh, this is like a comedy," and that's why there's, like, the dramatic music because it's just so over the top, like, we're kinda laughing with the movie about this. Like, what do you think
Um,
it is? Like, why? Did you think it was funny or witty? Witty
no,
was something that
no,
I kept seeing in these, like, articles was like, "Oh, the wit of the screenplay."
no. I didn't think there was a single funny moment in it, and I don't feel like that's me being a stick in the mud. I enjoy a good joke. I just didn't think there was anything in it that, I mean, besides maybe when he, like, is high on the roof and, like, almost falls off the roof, and he
But
says,
then he starts crying and it's heartbreaking.
I know that part's sad, but, like, right before that when he says, like, "I was thinking, like, would I have to X-ray my own leg?" Like, that was it. That's the only thing I could think of was, like, kind of funny, you know? No, it's not a funny movie at all. Like, it's super dark, dude, and, like, serious, and the music literally made it seem like someone was gonna get stabbed in the throat at any second. Like, I was like, "Someone's gonna die." Like,
That's supposed to be the
100%.
funny part, is the music, is part of what makes it funny according to what I'm reading on the onlines.
So, are some people interpreting this like, what's her butt? She made that it was very funny, and it was, like, the woman across the street from the house in the window, and, like, this really
Oh,
long
Kristen
title.
Bell? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I started watching it,
Oh
yeah.
my god, it's so funny. It's so worth watching. I wonder if some people are interpreting this as that tempo, because that was very much making fun of those, like, Gone Girl dramatic movies about
Mhm.
rich white women who are like, "I saw murder," like, whatever. But that's not this at all. Like, this to me, it was not satire, this was not funny. I mean, I don't even think it was witty. I mean, I thought it was like, but I
Yeah,
also
no,
think
me
those
neither.
categories are crazy now. Like, sometimes I'm on Netflix and it's like, Babadook, comedy, and I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Like, you're gonna fuck up somebody's day if you're telling them Babadook's funny.
Well, I'm not
So,
even talking about just, like, the categorization on, like, websites.
you're like,
Oh,
people
yeah.
are saying it's funny. So,
Yeah,
I would
okay,
say you're wildly misunderstanding the film then,
so
or
it's
you and
okay, so
I
this
are
is
misunderstanding the film.
right? That's what I'm asking is, like, what does this movie how are people who have not been groomed and sexually abused by a teacher, by an adult, by someone who is in position of authority, how are they watching this movie, and like is it funny to them, this dynamic of, like, Julianne Moore being mom to her husband who is 20 something years younger?
But
Like,
how could it how
I
could it
don't
be
know.
funny? Like, the poor guy is, like, crying in half of the movie. You know? And, like, I also thought, and obviously this was on purpose, but, like, the scene where when Natalie Portman goes to work with him to shadow him, to, like, learn I pretty much to talk to him without his wife around. He's a doctor, and they're looking at an X-ray together, and it's an X-ray of, like, a kid's hand or something, and she says, like, "Oh, how old is this kid?" And he says he's 13, and that was the age that he was when he got abused, and she says
Yeah.
something like, "Oh, he's just a little kid," or whatever, and I was like, "Oh, obviously that was, like, a really probably, like, impactful moment for that guy," right? Is that idea of, "Okay, yeah, this is a little kid, and I'm seeing this as a little kid, and that's how old I was when this thing happened to me." Like, the beginning of that
Mm,
kinda thing breaking down in his head.
yeah.
So it's like, how would you watch a scene like that and be like, "Ha ha, it's so funny."
Okay, so I found one of the articles that I was reading earlier. It's a Vox article. It's by Asia Romano. It was written in 2024, and it reads: In the opening moments of Todd Haynes' May December, scandalous tabloid subject turned homemaker Gracie opens the refrigerator, dramatically accompanied by a sudden piano sting and an ominous camera zoom. The twist? They might not have enough hot dogs for their upcoming cookout. If that strikes you as funny, you're not alone. This is a film that reportedly had audiences laughing out loud during its debut, a story New York Times called the most fun film at Cannes 2023. And yet, it's also a film based on the horrifying real life story of a sexual predator and her child victim. And as we recently learned, the production didn't consult the victim, Vili Falau. There are inevitable gaps between fiction and real life that make it a complicated, difficult film to interpret. So you're not alone, Sarah.
Mm.
But yeah, see?
I will say the
People
hot
think
dog
it's
okay,
funny.
I did chuckle at the hot dog part. I forgot about the hot dog thing because it is very, like, this waspy bitch is all like, "Oh my god, we might not have enough hot dogs." I forgot about that part. But it wasn't yeah, I guess that part was okay, but I wouldn't call it funny, and I wouldn't call it fun.
I would certainly have not guessed that this was the most fun film of Cannes 2023.
Was Cannes just only Holocaust films? And then this one? Like, what are we doing? Because that's a really fucked up measurement stick. Apparently, people aren't making comedies anymore.
Yeah, I don't
Uh,
know, but I've read it and
that's
I was like,
weird.
"What? This isn't funny."
No, I no. And even, like, all the kids, like, all of the kids are super messed up, you know? Like, the one daughter obviously has body issues, the other one had body issues, the one son won't even talk to her. Her kids from her first marriage, that one is, like, clearly all messed up, the other kids don't talk to her. Like, it's just trauma all around. Her ex-husband, you know, talking about, like, finding out your wife's cheating on you with a 13-year-old. Like, I don't get it. I don't see the humor in it, but you and
Mhm.
I might be what people would call sticks in the mud when it comes to this subject, and I'm okay with that.
Somewhere
Mm.
in the darkest regions
Mm.
of the manosphere, and maybe just the human sphere, there are people who would say, well, biologically, when you are able to produce sperm or you're able
Mm.
to birth a child is when you are able to be considered sexually active or
Mhm.
a potential partner for breeding. The argument of like, well, it's human nature or so I think the pet store was intentional. And I think like the bugs and, just like nature
Mhm.
and maybe that's what it is with, like, this whole theme of grooming and abuse is, like, he what separates us from the lowest animal? What separates us from other creatures?
Mhm.
And there are many male animals that truly do rape their female
Most
counterparts.
most most of
Yes,
them.
correct. So
I'm happy I'm not a lion, I will tell you that.
oh my god. Oh, and a chicken.
Spurred spurred penises. Spikes.
No. Okay, yes, glad we're not lions. So I doubt that anyone like that is listening to this podcast. But what would be your response to someone who would try to make that argument of, "Oh, well, he was 13 and physically able to do it, and, humans, this is what we do as humans. Our thing is to procreate. How can you fight human nature?"
First of all, I would say, "Get off my lawn, pervert." I
That's
would
the right answer.
it makes me think of I think it's from Golden Girls. 'Cause I think Dorothy says, "Just 'cause the plumbing's in does not mean that the pipes are ready to be used," right? Just because
Mm.
it's there doesn't mean you're ready. And I think that's the boy's, now man victim in this movie's point of view is when he's trying to talk to his abusers, he's really just saying like, I just don't think I was ready. Like he's not even trying to say like you're a monster and all that. Like he's literally just saying like, I don't think I was ready to be making these decisions that I quote unquote made, and did I really make them? And if somebody tried to argue that, oh well we're just animals, blah 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 blah. I don't know, man. That's a stupid excuse to me. Like, there's a lot of things that separate us from animals. We have laws and we have checks and balances. We have currency. We have, you know what I mean? There's like so many things. Why would that be this one thing that you'd also animals fucking kill each other, dude, and like rip each other's throats out and disembowel each other and shit. Is that okay? Can we do that? Like, if it's okay to be sexually active with a child, then that child's mom should also legally be able to come over and slaughter you because animals would do it. Like that's a chaos. That is like a bananas point of view.
Yeah.
And I guess to me, when you said the pet store was it was very like on purpose that they did it. To me, I took it more like he is her pet.
Oh. Oh.
Because just think about the
Interesting.
way she treats him.
Yes.
Is like he's this, like literally at the beginning of the movie, I thought it was her kid. Like when they meet at the fridge and he's like has the second beer and she says something like that's two.
Yeah.
Which is very, like, maternal. I thought it was her kid at first until she kissed him, and I was like, "Oh, damn, okay, that's the guy," and I was like, "Duh, name of the movie." But I wasn't sure at first if the movie was about the 2 women being May and December because I didn't know anything about it. So anyways, I guess I just took it as, like, she is keeping him as a pet and still has him as a pet, and then he has these monarch butterflies as a pet, and then, like, Natalie Portman's character maybe becoming this character is her pet or the project is her pet project. Like, I don't know, you know what I mean? And then so I guess I just took it more like that. Like it's just this like control, just something about having control over something that is weaker,
Yeah. And having to
you
be
know.
like its sole like caretaker.
But it
Yeah.
also goes both ways because when Natalie Portman says to what is Joe? Is
Yes.
that his name? I'm so bad with names. Yes, Joe's character. After they have like 3-second sex, she says something like, "You're
For
so." Oh
real.
my god. I know, poor guy. I did chuckle and I was like, "Mm, that seems about right." Like,
Yeah.
it's like, he'd be super excited to be having sex with someone his own age and, whatever. But she says, "You've got time to start over." But she also says it by saying, like, "You're so young," which I also was like, "Girl, that is not the thing to say to this guy." Like, yuck. Like, "You're so young, you could start over." It's like they're the same
Yeah.
age. It's not inappropriate she's, like, having sex with him age-wise, but it just felt really like she was, like, thinking about him like a child, but then when he says, "I can't leave her," because she'd fall apart, so then it's like he's also her caretaker, so it's like
Mhm.
it's a
Mm.
classic just codependent nightmare, on both ends, but yeah, I guess I would take it more of that than, like, "We're all just animals," or something.
I first started having that thought of, do we just love having bugs in movies about abuse because or like we're trying to make like some parallel between like natural instinct and creature, whatever.
Mhm.
Because like when as she's walking, she asked to see the stock room, which is in the movie where she was caught, or Gracie was caught abusing Joe. And as Elizabeth and the store owner are walking back to the stockroom, you can hear just like all these birds, sounds. You're almost like walking through a jungle kind of thing. But yeah, no, I agree. And it was hard for me to like really try to articulate what the argument would be because I don't think that way. I know that there are people out there who do use the fact
Mm.
that like, oh, you hit an age where you can start procreating. Great. That means that you're ready. And in some cultures too, it's
Mhm.
not unheard of for a 15-year-old to be having babies with a 30-year-old. But I agree. And I think obviously we're not animals and we have brains that have prefrontal cortex. And that's because we are able to make decisions.
Mhm.
And we should be making decisions that protect the most vulnerable because we're people and that's what we are supposed to do.
Yeah.
So was there anything relatable in this movie for you?
Yeah, I mean, like those little sprinklings of him kind of figuring it out or kind of starting to see what it really was, I think is relatable. And then I think unfortunately the scene where he's like trying to talk to her
Mm.
about what happened and she's deflecting and blaming him and saying that he was in control and he seduced her and I agree with you, like I think it was really well acted on his part, like how desperate he is to just be heard and like express the way he feels and not be gaslit. And I think that was also relatable because I actually had tried to reach out to our abuser like a year or so after I broke things off with him because I had started to feel weird about like what had happened between the two of us and I had wanted to like talk about it and he did not call me back and refused to talk to me about it and I probably spared me a very unpleasant conversation, but, like, I just remember that feeling, right, of, like, wanting I mean, what are they gonna say to you, I guess? Like, "You're totally right, I did abuse you, I'm sorry about that." It's almost like you wanna be, like, validated in your experience, but you're trying to do it with the one person in the world that will never validate your experience, so I feel like that was relatable. How about you?
Not a whole lot. There were definitely scenes that reminded me of other people that I know, other women that I know,
Mm,
who, like I said, either still have to coexist in some way with their abuser or their abuser is still part of their life in some way, even if they don't have to interact with them. So it made me think a lot about those women. That one scene where Elizabeth and Joe are talking to each other, it's like a one-on-one and I think this is right before they have sex. He says to her something along the lines of, she saw me. And right before that, he says something like, girls never, and he doesn't really finish his thought. He's like, girls never, but, she saw me.
mm,
So I could relate to that. I remember talking about that in the me episode, the Diana episode of like, I felt invisible to boys at my school. In the movie, they make it a point to talk about how Joe was one of the only Korean
mm.
or half Korean students at his school, so that set him apart, and that's how I felt growing up, like, I just felt, like, invisible to everybody, and so that was relatable,
That was also
and
the same line in Election.
yeah, exactly. The whole thing with, like, h he never really processed it with his parents.
Mm.
Because in the movie his mom died and his dad just never wanted to talk about it, it didn't seem. I could kind of relate to that as well, because even though I'd like to believe I'm still processing it with my parents, I don't know how much more processing there's going to be, that's not led by me. And I'm getting to a
Mm.
point where I'm just like, okay, if you're not wanting to do this, like I can't make you do it, and when it does
Yeah.
happen, it's a lot of the situation of the kid on the roof with his dad of like, "Okay, well, now you're crying, and now I have to make you feel okay." So that part was relatable too of just like, I don't know, maybe there will never be that processing for me.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that also is a big part of that character's struggle, right? Is that he hasn't processed it with his family. He obviously hasn't processed it with his wife slash abuser. And as you and I both know, and I think anybody who knows anything about abuse knows, this is extremely isolating. So he's probably not processed it with anybody, right? Like I think that's just the
Even
idea is just
himself.
yeah, like he hasn't processed it with anybody internally, externally, nothing. So I think that's kind of where he's at in this movie is it's like that point when your body is just like, we're done. We're not holding it in anymore. We can't. Like this is the breaking point and it's just going to start spilling out. I thought it was interesting, because it correlates with the timing of like their youngest kids graduating high school, which is an emotional time for any parent anyways, and you're becoming an empty nester. But that's also the time when you're realizing, I think for a lot of people is like, it's just you and your spouse again. And is this really where you wanna be? Like, is this the person you don't have the
Mm.
distractions of your kids anymore. It's now you and this person, and it really kinda makes you face your relationship and the reality of the life that you have cultivated for yourself. Yeah, but then I also thought the graduation scene, like, he was, like, really upset watching the kids graduate, and my mind thinking about, like, our experiences, I was like, "Did he get to graduate from high school?" Like, he was in tabloids when he was 13. Like, did he get to finish high school or did he have to homeschool? Like, did he
Yeah.
ever get to walk on stage and have a graduation? Like, so for me as a survivor of that kind of abuse, like, that whole scene was very colored by my own experience of just kind of like, is he also crying because he's realizing he lost his childhood? On
Mhm.
top of the normal, "I'm crying because my kids are graduating from high school," and this passage of time, you know what I mean?
I don't think he had fully processed it himself, and he did, I think, even say something to her to Gracie along the lines of, like, "There's some things we haven't talked about in a while, maybe ever." So I was thinking, okay, they're about to be empty nesters. He is 36, meaning he's the same age that she was when she first abused him.
Mhm,
She had a baby with him while she was in jail. So, like, when she got out of jail, they already had, like, a third, in their
mhm,
life. It was never just the 2 of them, and now it is gonna be just the 2 of them.
mhm.
It was just the 2 of them when he was 13 and she was, oh, no, I feel like in the movie, he might have even been 11? I don't know, somewhere between 11 and 13, and she was in her 30s. That's when they were alone together, and then they had kids and more kids, and now they're gonna have this alone time together again, but now, like, he is an adult.
Mhm. When you hit the age your abuser was when they were abusing you is a really intense experience because you realize how young children look to you when
Yes.
you are not a predator, and it gives you so much more sympathy, I think, and grace for yourself when you see kids that are kids, and then you realize, like, "Jesus Christ, I was a child," you know?
Mhm.
I know that for myself when I hit that age that when my abuser was abusing me, like, it really was a hard thing to think about. Like, so I think that it's very much on purpose in this film that, yeah, he is the same age that she was when she was abusing him. Makes a lot of sense that would be kind of be that, like, aha, like, "Oh, fuck. Okay. This is super messed up." This is not something I would ever do. I wouldn't see a kid that's 13 and think of them as a sexual creature, you know? So, I don't know. It was a weird movie. I will say that.
Would you recommend this movie for any reason? Like, is this a helpful movie? Was it helpful in any way? Would you recommend it for its intense piano score? What are your thoughts?
I mean, if you're looking for, like, a suspense movie that nothing really ever ends up happening, sure, check it out. I really thought it was gonna go full, like, Desperate Housewives, and it was gonna be, like, her son from the first marriage kills somebody or, like, she kills herself. Like, I thought it was gonna go off the rails, and it did not. I mean, I appreciated that they didn't, unlike some of these other films, they didn't try to make the kid look like a devious Lolita character. I also think there very rarely is representation of boys being sexually abused with childhood abuse. I think that's worth noting. I think the guy that played Joe was a good actor and I think he did a good job with it. And I think it was a good exploration of just the reality of, child sexual abuse on an adult and then specifically filtered underneath of a man's experience. How about you? Would you suggest
Um,
this to anybody for any reason?
the acting, I think, was pretty good.
Yeah,
I think Julianne Moore, Natalie Portman, and Charles Melton all did really well acting,
yeah.
jobs. It made me wanna go to Savannah, Georgia,
I've always heard good
but
things. I've heard it's very
yeah,
pretty.
same, yeah, but other than that, not no, no. I think maybe if it would have been a little bit more based on
Mm,
the true story versus inspired, maybe I would have liked it a little bit more. It had been on my list of, like, one to check out, and
sure.
I'm glad we watched it.
We did it.
Sarah, what's gonna be our next Groom scroll
We are going to talk about Never Been Kissed, the Drew Barrymore movie, and
on the next Groom scroll
maybe Drew
episode?
Barrymore will come in as a guest and talk to us about it.
Hey, Drew, if you're I'm sorry. Hey, Miss Barrymore, if you're listening, please come on our podcast and tell us how you feel about it.
I'm sure she's listening. She's a dedicated fan of Blooming After Grooming. Well, thank you all for listening to our conversation about May December. If you haven't watched it, I don't know.
That's okay.
That's okay. I would say, like, you're not missing much. You know, I don't know. Let us know what you think we should be talking about in our next upcoming episodes of Groom Scroll. We've got ways of getting a hold of us through social at
Blooming After Pod.
Diana does her homework and is better at this than I am.
And we also have an email, bloomingaftergrooming@gmail.com. Join the conversation. Have you seen May December? What'd you think? Have you heard of the Mary Kay Letourneau story? What'd you think about that? Okay. Goodbye, listeners.
Thanks for visiting. And Rum Tum Tigger.
He's the sexy cat, right?
Yeah, he's all like,
yeah.
Rum Tum Tigger is a curious cat.
Yeah.
He's all like fucking lunging his pelvis and shit. Oh my God, dude. Loved that show. It's got singing and dancing and cats.